hot one today, day 2 of that. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. We're probably not quite, although it's pretty humid this morning, and it was pretty warm overnight. I think it was a whopping 70 degrees overnight, but we're going to get back into the mid to upper 80s today. Yesterday, we did get into the 90s, and so day 2 of this, things do start to cool down a little bit as we get into the Memorial Day weekend. But good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards. And our poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of an H has to do with AI, artificial intelligence. We have a Google expert coming up this hour. And Nick Burns going to talk about AI and how they're employing it on the search stuff in Google. We've seen a lot of high-tech layoffs like code writers and programmers and software stuff because of AI. Are you worried? Yes or no? Are you worried about losing your job because of AI? And I heard yesterday, as we bring in our first contributor this morning, a lot of college students are already redirecting their majors midstream right now because of AI, university students. All right, let me tell you what's going on today. We got another congressional candidate running for office coming up, John Decker, our own White House correspondent this hour. We'll have that expert from Google AI, Nick Burns. We're going to hear from our friends, a very important interview this hour, and maybe it's a good segue to our first guest, Dr. Vic on the economic side, Taylor from the Bank of America Institute, and they study a bunch of consumer client credit card data and a whole lot more. We're going to hear what they have to say about this economy with the higher energy and gas prices and the drag of this uncertainty with the Middle East. But Dr. Vic Ramancharamani joining us, one of our great contributors and experts out there on the economic front, great entrepreneur. Good morning, Dr. Vic.
Good morning, Jack. How you doing today?
Good. We're in one of those packed modes today, so I wanted you to kind of run through a quick report on what you're sensing with the local and national economy right now. We have our friends from Bank of America coming up, but are people pausing? Are these higher gas prices starting to cut in because of trucking costs for restaurants and food and groceries? Is it causing a little bit of a pause or a stall with the uncertainty?
Yes.
What are you seeing, Dr. Vic?
Yes, Jack. So look, I think you're hitting at probably one of the key issues that's going to affect not only the economy, but I suspect will have a impact on the upcoming midterm elections. Affordability is a crisis. We're seeing mortgage rates rise. I think that's going to put the housing market effectively into a stall. We're seeing gas prices stay elevated, which is pinching budgets for individuals when they go to buy regular groceries. Summer camps are being put on hold. Maybe you're not putting a steak on the grill. You might have to move to chicken or hot dogs this year. Folks are feeling pinched. That is absolutely clear. Worse than that, I actually think the inflation shows no signs of letting up. I can tell you from at least my work in the pizza business, diesel prices are going to impact the cost of pizza. How's that? Well, it turns out the cheese comes by truck, the sauce comes by truck, the flour comes by truck, and then we ship product by truck. So diesel prices specifically, I view as a leading indicator of where future inflationary pressures may rise. And I think it's going to be coming. So yes, we've seen consumers get pinched. Unfortunately, I don't see relief in sight.
Well, I want to get you on more in the days ahead because you have a fascinating story with the operation in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. But you're in that wholesale food business and you're seeing it because, as you said, the demand for your product has never been higher. You're doing great, but the cost of getting stuff in and out of there, right?
Yeah, so Jack, that's right. So pizza, for those that don't know, frozen pizza specifically tends to do really well when consumers are feeling pinched. And it makes sense, right? You don't eat out as much. Going out for a meal for a family of 4 gets expensive. You get takeout. After takeout feels expensive, you eventually go to get your own food and make it at home. Right. And pizza sales are.
But you got to pay for the cheese and the tomato that comes in on a truck.
That's the other problem, right? So we got both upside from the demand, but we're feeling pressure on the cost.
Right.
And that's true for everyone. We're seeing it in the data. You saw the inflation data last week. You're seeing PPI, CPI rising ahead of it. I mean, that's just the reality, Jack.
All right. I'm going to get you back again next week. Thank you. I love that, Dr. Vic, on the socioeconomic side, and don't hold it against him. He taught at a few Ivy League universities as well. Thank you, Dr. Vic.
Thanks, Jack. All right. Bye.
All right. One of our political analysts and all-star, Brad Card, with a live report from D.C. Brad and co-host of Contact Politics. Brad Card, good morning. President Trump busy as he is with the situation with Iran, flexing and getting his way in some key primaries yesterday and last night. Good morning, Brad.
Yeah, it's almost like a temper tantrum to me. I don't know. It's head scratching if you want to keep the majority, and there's so much going on here, Jack. You had the primary in Kentucky. Congressman Tom Massey was ousted, lost the primary when Trump came in heavy with him. His people spent $33 million, and Ed Gellerin won that primary in Congress. For Congress, he'll end up being elected. Very Republican district. And something that is really bothering a lot of senators is he came out and endorsed Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton was impeached by Republicans in the Texas legislature, and he was later acquitted, but he was impeached. And then he's had numerous allegations. People could go on and look at it, and I don't know how he can win. He's already upside down in polling with James Tallarico, the Democrat, who is doesn't have the runoff. He's part of this. He's the Democrat candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have John Cornyn, who's still not going away. He's going to be in this primary, but I don't know how you unite a Republican Party in Texas. I don't see the Bush people supporting Paxton, which there's a lot of them still in Texas, and obviously I don't see the Cornyn people supporting Paxton there, and I think this might be an example where Paxton could actually win this primary and lose the general election. And we're talking about potentially losing Texas, which would be outrageous for Republicans. But that's where we're at. And then everything that the president's doing, he sets up this fund, $1,776 billion fund, basically for people that feel that they've been targeted and the Department of Justice has been weaponized against them. This is unrigged. This is not congressionally authorized.
Well, didn't Senator Thune come out and doesn't like it?
Thune he says he doesn't see the purpose for it.
Well, that's not going to go anywhere if the Senate. But let me go back to this flexing in the primaries. What does it say, Brad Card? Is the Republican Party, certainly in these states, the party of Trump?
Oh, there's no question about that Donald Trump has a solid, firm grip on the Republican Party. It is down from what it used to be. It's not in the high 80s like it used to be. It's probably somewhere in the low 70s, but that's pretty significant. And if it's in the 70s, he's going to be able to control primaries. The problem is winning an election is not winning a primary. And we saw that in New Hampshire many times. And we saw a strong Trump candidate, Caroline Leavitt, win that congressional primary and lose the general election. And that's what I fear. And we need to win the House. Also, all these Trump candidates right now are going to be forced to defend what the president is doing.
Right, but that's not new. That's
having the IRS that they're not allowed.
But that's not new. I mean,
audit
that's not
Donald
new.
Trump or his family.
That's not new. Any Republican running is going to be asked, do you support this? That's what they've been doing for what? How many cycles now?
But they're going to have to defend all these other things that he just did.
Yeah.
Can you defend the fact that the IRS is not going to be allowed to audit?
Yeah, but you're assuming it's going to go through. And the other thing, Brad, is
it went through. That was his negotiation.
With the IRS.
Negotiation was
with the IRS, yes. Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's. Do you think he's going to change? You think Donald Trump's all of a sudden going to change?
No, I don't. I don't. But I'm saying we're trying to win primaries here. We're trying to win elections.
All right.
We're trying to win primaries with candidates that can win general elections.
All right, Brad Card, thank you.
Republicans want to win the House back, and going to keep the House and they want to keep the Senate, and it's going to be tough to do.
And right now, the midterms, who knows in the fall what the issues are going to be, especially with affordability. So, all right, Brad Card live. Thank you on a hot one. Enjoy it. Enjoy the heat. And when we come back, we're going to introduce you to one of the congressional candidates running on the 1st congressional district on the Republican side. Then our friends from Google AI. What does it all mean? And John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment.
Registration is now open.
New Hampshire from the New England College Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, welcome back. A warm one, day 2 of it. And we're moving into Memorial Day this weekend. Hard to believe. Well, not with this weather. It kind of feels appropriate. Hey, we got a lot coming up. We're going to be, and by the way, kudos to Governor Kelly Ayotte for signing that measure that would really allow Gold Star families, and it's very appropriate before Memorial Day to get Gold Star license plates. And a lot of people forget Memorial Day may be about cookouts and a day off, but it's really about remembering those who gave all. 96. If you want to know the number, 96 families in New Hampshire, 96 families in the war on terror alone, 96 Gold Star families. So that's pretty cool with the license plates. All right, Melissa Bailey, Republican, running in the 1st Congressional District in our studios. Good Wednesday morning.
Good morning, Jack. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so I've been doing this a little while, as they say, and one thing I've asked presidents and presidential candidates, gubernatorial, Senate, congressional, why are you running for office?
Well, I'm running for office because as a mom, I knew I couldn't sit on the sidelines and watch as the radical left took over our schools, our locker rooms of our children, and just the future. And I have a background in accounting and auditing, and I'm tired of the waste and the reckless spending in Washington and just the lack of a moral compass there. I think we need more everyday moms and dads who are raising families, who are really fighting for the future for our next generation to be in politics.
Now, you're in that 1st Congressional District race. In the past, it's gone like a ping pong ball back and forth with Republicans and Democrats, but it's really the one congressional district people say here that can skew Republican if independents go that way a little bit. I guess my question for you is, when you're out and about and you're campaigning, you're talking to groups, go to business groups or homes or living rooms saying, hey, I'm running for Congress. What are the customers telling you? What are they asking? What are the voters who are interested? What are they saying to you? What are the, if you had one or two, is it affordability? Is it gas prices? What are they saying to you?
Yeah, affordability is certainly on everyone's mind, but it's not something that's happened overnight. We've seen prices go up year after year. So people have been dealing with that for a while. But I think there's just an underlying sense of unease, of a lack of pride in our country. We feel just a lot of our values being undermined. As parents, certainly I talk to a lot of parents who see the education system of our children. You know, test scores continue to go down. We wonder about their future there for our children. And people just, I think they want a sense of purpose. People feel divided, and that the government is trying to have just like a big hand in the way we're raising our families. So right here in New Hampshire, for example, parental rights, education freedom, those are big issues, and parents talk to me about those every day.
Now, you've mentioned that twice now on the school side, and you as a parent, and I've commented, I have not so much what some of the things you're talking about, but I've asked the candidates and I haven't gotten an answer on some of the questions about just simple questions. It's amazing. Like one Democrat who's pretty well known running in the 1st Congressional District, I just said a straight question because in Bow, New Hampshire, Bow High School, there was a case, goes back a couple years, where a couple parents weren't happy. And I don't know, J-Dog, you might have to help me if it was lacrosse or soccer, but they were unhappy that there was a young male playing against their daughters, and they wore some wristbands kind of to make a statement. They weren't yelling and screaming, they weren't name calling, but they were basically by Bow school officials banned from the events. And it became a pretty, statewide, regional, maybe national story a ways back. And I don't know the outcome, but I think there was some, went to court. But it's a legitimate question to ask a congressional candidate in case there's a vote. Are you okay with boys playing in girls' sports or men playing in women's sports? And sometimes a candidate's a 4-minute answer. You can't understand their answer. So let me ask you, because it is a question. What do you think about in, New Hampshire public sports, public school sports? Are you okay with boys competing on a girls' team?
No, we need to protect women and girls' privacy, safety, and fairness when it comes to sports, when it comes to locker rooms, when it comes to bathrooms. In fact, we have 3 bills going through our state house right now, and I was the only CD1 candidate in Concord testifying in favor of those bills. So I hope that we will have protections there.
Are people, when you go out and about, by the way, Melissa Bailey, Republican, running in the 1st Congressional District, and it's a crowded, there's several, you have competitors, and in fact, it may be the most crowded federal race we have, really, that first congressional district.
Yeah.
On the Democrat side, there's several, and on yours. But you being a candidate there, I guess my question too is, when you're out and about, do people ask you about President Trump? Do they talk about the war with Iran? Do they say they want it to end? They're okay with it? Do they talk about gas prices? Do they ask you if you're lockstep with President Trump, or do they not bring that up?
Yeah, people talk about President Trump, of course, and the war with Iran comes up. I think people see the gas price impact as the biggest thing that people are talking about when it comes to the war, because as we know, the news cycle moves incredibly fast. So there's always a new headline of the day. So people do wonder about President Trump, but he's not on the ballot this time. We are running as representatives of our state. So people see that as a little different. And really what people are talking about, we talked about affordability. People also are talking about safety as far as having secure borders. Right now, fraud is exploding. So a lot of people are concerned about the fraud and waste in Washington.
You and I were talking before we went on about this. You have a financial background on that. And we hear a lot. I hear a lot. We've heard a lot about California. I've heard a lot about Medicaid fraud in Minnesota, of course, and in Maine, the state of Maine. I'm hearing more and more that there may be a bigger number there in the state of Maine of people that are just billing Medicaid, whether it's a hospice health center or a child's daycare center after school.
Now translators. I didn't even know we paid for translators. So
what's that?
I didn't even know we paid for translators.
Yeah, but they're sending to the federal taxpayers Medicaid. They're billing for like shell offices that aren't even there taking care of kids or people. What's our situation now? I know the Attorney General's office, we look into it here in New Hampshire, but do you think there's a Medicaid fraud problem in almost every state to some degree?
To a degree, there's an element of fraud in every process, right? And so the bigger our federal government is, the bigger the opportunity for fraud. And then with COVID and with a lot of the waivers that were introduced, it just introduced a new element of fraud and made it easier and easier for these fraudsters to get away with things. So there certainly is going to be a degree in every state, but even if it's happening in California, we're paying for it here with our federal taxes. So that's important, that even if it's happening across the state, it is impacting us here.
So one question I've asked Melissa Bailey, I've asked candidates in your race, I've asked John E. Sununu running in the U.S. Senate, Republican Scott Brown, just asked him this week, last time he was on. In this, you mentioned the reasons why you want to run when I asked you, but in this divisive environment, it's clearly divisive. I mean, I deal with it on my show and I try and be respectful. We have Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Just a civil, respectful discussion is what's lacking nationally, in my humble opinion. But today, if someone doesn't agree with you politically, like you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, I don't agree with you. Therefore, I'm going to start calling you names. I'm going to start being vitriolic and all these things. What did you really have to think 2 or 3 times? Do I really want to run for Congress in this environment? Do I really want to get out there and go through all this and run for Congress? Is it that important? Did you go through that process in your head?
No, because it's important enough, and it's actually freeing just to be able to be myself and talk about the way I really feel. And people certainly do attack you for it. I have a pretty big social media presence, a bigger social media platform than probably anyone else in this race. And people are brutal out there. They're behind screens. And so they will say anything. And you have to roll with it. You can't let it impact who you are. And certainly we're divided. And I think there are areas of agreement if people are willing to come to the table in good faith. It's just hard to find that across the aisle these days.
So one question before I let you go, Melissa Bailey, Republican, running in the 1st congressional district. We've got a full show for you, but I want to ask you this. No one, now you have a financial background and you may want to, no one that I hear federally is talking about our debt as a country. I lose track of it. It's so big. Was it 39 trillion? $39 trillion. One thing everyone should worry about, and we have a great sponsor, AARP in New Hampshire, and they've talked about this. Social Security is a monthly, it's not an entitlement. People pay into it. They pay into it for right? And a lot of our listeners rely on that Social Security check. And no one, regardless of party in Washington, everyone talks about changing Washington. No one, doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, what administration talks about dealing with the debt. And I'm hearing in 5 or 6 years, Social Security is not solvent, and it might be a 10 or 20% adjustment. How do we save Social Security? Because unlike a lot of these other entitlements, That's something people really need right now with the cost of living and rent and mortgages and food. Why isn't anyone talking about it? Are you worried about that?
Absolutely. I talk about the debt a lot. It's a tax that's being put on all of us having to service this debt, and it's taking away our children's future before they have a chance to grow up. I liken it to parents who have taken out credit cards in their kids' names, and they are just charging up these balances that they have no say in.
Is that
So
happening?
What's that?
Is that happening?
No, but you hear about,
but you know
hear
what?
about
I could
fraud
picture that.
where-
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's scary. I mean,
using other
the
people's
debt.
social security numbers is
Yeah,
what they're
yeah.
doing. So yeah, it's a huge problem and certainly a focus of my platform. And we start with social security with what we were just talking about with all of this fraud.
Yeah.
There's been estimates that if it's $1 trillion a year, we're running a $2 trillion deficit. So that's half of it right there. So
Oh, geez.
if we can focus on really making programs more efficient,
And cut down on the fraud.
exactly.
All right. Hey, Melissa Bailey, thank you so much. Website if people want to learn more.
Melissa Bailey for New Hampshire. No, I'm sorry, Melissa Bailey for NH.
For NH.
Yes.
All right, like the Pulse of NH. All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to hear from Google AI executive or official on Searchable. What is AI doing there? And our poll question actually up on X at the Pulse of NH morning has to do with AI. Are you worried about AI cutting into your job security? Yes or no? And a little bit later on, John Decker, our White House correspondent. And then we hear from our friends at Bank of America and the Bank of America Institute. Live, one of their economists, global or national economists, on how resilient are consumers with higher gas prices and affordability issues. All that coming up on the Pulse of NH. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a moment.
News, Catch Good Morning New Hampshire streaming on YouTube with the Pulse of New Hampshire. Good Morning New Hampshire live from the New England College Studios. Now, back to Jack on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Okay, another hot one out there. Welcome back. 9:35, 9:36 on a Wednesday, and we are packed this morning like a flight pulling away from the gate to get you on the tarmac. So buckle up, stay tuned. Great news talk. Hey Alexa, hey Google worldwide. Play the Pulse of an H. John Decker, our White House correspondent, joining us live. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning to you, Jack. Hope you're doing well today.
Good. So you never know who's going to fill in as the White House press secretary these days, huh?
No, you're referencing the Vice President J.D. Vance, showing up yesterday. That's, of course, because Caroline Leavitt remains on maternity leave, and the president putting other people in his administration to sub in for Caroline. Just a few weeks ago, it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and yesterday it was the vice president. And he got a lot of questions concerning the ongoing war in Iran.
You know, it's interesting. I saw Secretary of State Marco Rubio do that recently. Now J.D. Vance. They may square off in 2028. Who's better at it, John?
I leave that. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. Who's better at it? Certainly there was a lot of buzz with Marco Rubio and the job that he did a few weeks ago. So you could argue that J.D. Vance had a tough act to follow. But this is not how we choose our presidents.
Yeah.
You know how they did at a White House press briefing as the acting press secretary, so to speak.
Right.
There are certainly advantages that the vice president has going into that race to succeed President Trump to be the Republican nominee.
Real quickly to run John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Any big surprises on these primaries? President Trump certainly flexing in some of these key primary races.
Yeah, no surprise. I don't think, there's no doubt. I don't think that I had or anybody else had that Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. He has so much influence within the Republican Party. And if the president views you as an impediment to his agenda, look out, because the president may endorse a primary opponent, and that's what happened with Thomas Massie. And Thomas Massie lost, pretty handily to the opponent that President Trump endorsed in that Republican primary, which took place yesterday in Kentucky.
And other ones. Thank you, John Decker, our White House correspondent.
Thank you.
All right, a poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of an H really ties into our, same subject matter as our next guest from Google. Are you worried AI is going to replace or cut into your job security? Yes or no? We'll have results for you tomorrow. But we're joined now on the what Google is doing to leverage this. Nick Burns is a Google search expert from New York. Nick joins us from Google live this morning on the Pulse of an H. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about everything we announced at Google I/O.
Well, tell us about it, because you're doing a lot of different things to basically leverage this new technology. You're rolling out updates, products, features, creative stuff, simplify the routine. I mean, I've seen a difference just on search stuff. Take it away, Nick.
Yeah, I think we're really focused on, bringing AI to people in a way that's helpful and really showing the power of what it can do to really streamline your life and organize your day and kind of take some of those annoying little tasks off your plate a little bit. So for example, we announced the Daily Brief, which is part of the Gemini app. And it's just like a little assistant that gives you a personalized morning digest that's designed to help you start your day off right. So once you opt in, Gemini will work across your connected Google apps in the background. And it looks, like Gmail box or your calendar, and it gathers all those urgent updates and compiles a helpful, skimmable briefing so that you kind of know what you're getting into as you start your day. Another example is really Gemini Spark. And this is really leaning into what we're calling agentic AI. And that's just a fancy way of saying AI can actually take actions on your behalf to really take a lot of the extra work off your plate. So for instance, you can ask it to automatically look through your monthly credit card statements to flag new or hidden subscription fees, or keep an eye on your Gmail inbox to see if there's any urgent updates from your kids' schools, and alert you to those things.
Well,
so it's really just Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, how long have you been at Google or with Google, Nick?
Oh God, 12 years, if you can believe it.
Wow.
It's a long time. But
Well,
I
let
love
me
it.
ask you this. I've noticed I don't know, I'm more of just a consumer. This is what you're doing. So it sounds like Google's really, and I know you're one of the major players doing this, embracing this. I've never seen new huge technology, and that some are saying that the AI impact, the capabilities, the technology, even with more energy needs and data centers to support it, is transformational to say the very least. I've never seen technology go away, especially with all the big players putting so much investment in this. But for some people, Nick, you're going out of the way to make it helpful on everything from, you mentioned the checking your credit card stuff to make sure there's no like fees that going in, search stuff, creative stuff, artwork, building a website now, all these tools, you're making it very user friendly. But for some people, it's overwhelming and a little bit intimidating. So when you're out and about with friends and they say, hey, Nick, you've been with Google for 12 years. Is this a good or bad thing overall? How do you answer that in a conversational, way?
Yeah, I think that's, anytime you have a new technology, I think, especially one as transformative as AI, I think it can be intimidating. And I think one thing that Google's really focused on is developing AI in the most responsible way possible. And that means basically keeping the user or the person in control of their own data. So anytime you're saying you're giving information, you're giving it permission to do things. So even in this agentic reality where the AI will start taking actions on your behalf under your direction, you would always supervise it to ensure that you know what it's doing, you're aware of it. It's not going to go, run up your credit card or anything like that, because you're going to be the one who reviews any kind of shopping cart to make sure that it all looks accurate, and then you will click the purchase button. So we really want to make sure that we're retaining the decision making and,
Right.
when it really matters in the hands of the users and people.
So are you overall excited about it, Nick, in the next several years?
I mean, I absolutely am. I mean, I'm just waiting for the day that it can, wash my dishes and clean my apartment.
No, that's robot. That'll be robotics, Nick. All right, Nick Burns with Google, search expert. Thank you, Nick, for joining us for a bit here. Good morning, New Hampshire, the pulse of an age. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from our friends at Bank of America, the Institute, Bank of America Institute. And it's there for you, really, the public. They have amazing information. And one of their economists is going to be joining us. And we're going to talk about everything on what people are feeling with higher gas prices and some of the other things. But overall, small business clients, individual consumers, and they are a great barometer of this economy. We're even going to talk with our next guest, Taylor, from the Bank of America Institute, about the World Cup that's around the corner. And what does it mean for local economies, including right here in New England? Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment.
107.7 WTP. powered by R&D Paving. Good Morning New Hampshire, live from the New England College Studios, home to a new media center where the next generation of journalists are taught to do it right. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Looking forward to the this interview because we talk a lot about the economy here. I know it's on your minds as we go into Memorial Day, the higher gas and energy prices, which affect food prices, which affect everything. And everything just seems to be rather expensive these days. And where's it going? And is it slowing things down? Taylor Boley is an economist with the Bank of America Institute. Taylor's been on with us before. She's awesome. Great update. Great time for an update as we go into the kickoff of summer. Taylor, thanks for being with us. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of NH.
Hey, Jack. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And I should say New England now because we're on more stations up into Maine and the north. Taylor, let's just start again because I explain to folks the Bank of America Institute is a wonderful resource. You do great stuff in terms of consumer data, small business, and you look at the overall trends and you can talk about resiliency with the economy or not. Just refresh a little bit of what the Institute is.
Of course. Yeah. So Bank of America Institute essentially looks at Bank of America's proprietary data, which is comprised of nearly 70 million consumer and small business clients. So that is a really powerful data set that allows us to draw near real-time insights into what's happening with the economy. And kind of to put that in a little bit more perspective, if we're just talking about New England, that's more than 12 times the number of households in that area. So again, we're sharing these insights for free, and it's a pretty powerful data set that resonates with really what we're seeing with what you were just talking about in terms of how consumers are faring, what price shocks might they be having to adjust to, all of that good stuff.
And you have a lot of consumers and a lot of clients with Bank of America. All right, here's the big question, Taylor. I know you can handle it, and you're not going to be surprised. I can't believe it, but we're almost halfway through the year. News changes almost by the day. How is the consumer doing?
I mean, I think I've said this before when I've been on, and the answer is the consumer still looks resilient, which in some ways is a little surprising because of those things that you mentioned in terms of price hikes. Everything does feel more expensive. Yet within our data, consumer spending is still really strong. And even when you strip out gasoline spending, which we know gas prices at the pump have been high, spending was still strong in April, even when you take that out. And it actually posted the strongest growth in our data in 3 years. One of the reasons for this is that when we look at consumers' balance sheets, so what's in their checking and savings account, on an inflation-adjusted basis, so taking into consideration all of these cost pressures, those are still up compared to pre-pandemic levels. But I will say, beneath the surface of resilience, a K-shaped economy is very much apparent.
I want to come back and I'm going to ask you what that K-shaped economy is. But, for context, when you listen to Taylor Bank of America Institute, Bank of America has a great partner and sponsor of ours, by the way, nearly 70 million consumer and small business clients. Think of that. And you look at the total number of households in the country, which might be households, not people, households, like 130 million. So these insights are helpful, and they're available, by the way. People can look at, I think it's institute.bankofamerica.com. Okay, let's go back to the K-shaped economy. What does it mean, Taylor?
So when we talk about a K-shaped economy, that essentially means we're starting to see higher income spending growth really start to tick up, and middle and lower income spending growth is lagging. And this has been the case now for several months. And one of the reasons for that is that we are seeing that play out from a wage perspective. And so that makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, the amount of money that you're bringing home is really going to determine what you're spending on, what your budget looks like. And that's why when we look at discretionary spending, so things that are nice to have, we're seeing that very evident. So higher income households are spending a lot more. And that's even true when it comes to spending on pets. We recently did an analysis that saw that people are trading down. So they're maybe not shopping at specialty stores anymore, and they're looking for value when at big box retailers or grocery stores. And again, thinking about the environment we're in right now, higher gas prices also eat up a bigger share of lower income wallets. And so when we think about all these pressures, when people talk about affordability, that is very much a story here. What I will say, kind of a positive, is that we saw tax refund season benefit, but again, it benefited higher income households more so than lower income. So when we think about the coming months, it's something to keep in mind and think, okay, will there be buffers available to support this overall strong spending story we're seeing?
Interesting. With the recent tax season and tax refunds, some people were pleasantly surprised whether they were looking at overtime and some of the other continued tax breaks or tax rates that would have gone up, and they did not.
Mm-hmm.
What about today's consumer spending? Did that give a boost for consumers? Is that just a short blip or not?
So we did see within our data that around 20% of tax refunds were spent, but the rest was really put into savings.
Really?
And also there was a quarter that was used to make debt payments. So what I will say is that consumers were being very savvy in the way in which, depending on where you were across the income spectrum, what sort of refund you received, people were using it in a way that made the most sense to them. And kind of to your point, what happens when tax refunds run out? Well, again, I mentioned earlier that deposits are still up on an inflation adjusted basis. So that's a good thing. And people are starting to tap a little bit more on their credit lines, especially lower income households. But again, all signs still point to consumers continuing to spend, and especially so into the summer. We did an analysis recently on summer travel, and across the board, people are really still spending. And with the World Cup really right around the corner in our own backyard, that's also something that I think people are really excited about.
Well, I was going to ask you, because that is coming up, the World Cup, and there's been some controversy over the price of things like tickets and getting there, but it's going to be a big deal. So what do you think? World Cup it's more than just some games. It's to some people, it's going to be an economy. I mean, spending, jobs, energy. Bank of America, you have a report and some data. What are your thoughts on how this is going to impact the local economies?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for local communities that the expected benefit is definitely there. And I actually had the opportunity to go to an event hosted by Bank of America at Gillette Stadium. And that was really exciting to see a lot of local business owners there and to hear how they're thinking about planning around the event. And, when we've looked back previously, thinking about the Super Bowl or when Taylor Swift was doing her Eras tour across the country, small businesses cited that they saw more sales traffic, both in person and online. So that's a good thing, right? Because that just means it's a steady flow of spending, jobs, and of course, energy. And we see that also in our data. We have seen that the impact that has played out for the Super Bowl with those areas surrounding host cities, they do get a consumer spending boost. And, probably unsurprisingly, that's especially true for restaurants and bars and also liquor stores.
And people that Airbnb and homeowners, but the World Cup is a longer period. Hey, Taylor, great stuff. And I want to reiterate that your information is available, not just for consumers and clients, but the public. And I don't, this is not really, it's just when you were talking, I was just thinking, does your institute reflect anything in the New England area, which I think is higher than most, just the affordable housing challenge? Because we have a guest coming up next on that. And, we're seeing medium home prices that are just soaring. And you hear about younger folks moving to southern states to be able to afford a home. Does that weigh at all or not really show up in terms of consumer stuff?
No, it does. I mean, that's a really great point. And something that we do look at is housing activity. And we have seen over the past few years that certain areas in New England and the Northeast, people are starting to move out, or more specifically move out of really expensive cities and try to find somewhere that's more affordable. And that's kind of been the case across the country. But as we start to see people, this whole lock-in effect where homeowners don't want to leave the price of, a mortgage that they have because they had a good rate prior to all of the hikes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really weighing on people who want to buy a home. And so we're starting to see within our data too, that's why, there's an increase in renters. And when people are faced with housing costs, I mean, that's a real pressure point for consumers.
Awesome. What a great stuff. Everything from World Cup to just everyday stuff, and even with the higher prices on energy. Taylor Boley, Bank of America Institute. And Taylor, if I'm right, institute.bankofamerica altogether, institute.bankofamerica.com to get more?
That's right. Yeah. And it's totally free.
On all these insights. You might as well read them because they got not only great expertise like Taylor are experts, but they got the data. Thank you, Taylor. Stay cool. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about affordable housing. John Stebbins, Procon Inc., when they're working in Hampton, Portsmouth, Somersworth to get us some affordable housing. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment.